Hello, I'm Death's Arrow, and welcome to episode 28 of What I'm Thinking. In this episode, I will look at the Centurion Mk, a British medium tank that is rather reminiscent of the American medium line. From a historical perspective, the Centurion was a series of tanks developed during the middle of World War II starting in 1943. The British War Office issued a requirement for a heavy cruiser tank under the designation A41. The tank would be required to be able to withstand hits from the German 88mm gun, have a maximum weight of 40 tons, have increased durability and reliability over previous cruiser designs, have agility similar to the Comet, and a high reverse speed. The 40-ton weight limit was based on existing transportation trailers at the time and was later relaxed when it was determined that a 40-ton tank couldn't be armored enough to stop an 88mm round. A new transportation trailer would be required rather than limiting the tank's design. The suspension system was changed from the Comet's 5-road-wheel Christie suspension to a 6-road-wheel Horseman suspension. While the coil spring-based Horseman system didn't have the same ride quality as the Christie suspension, it took up less room within the hull of the tank and was easier to maintain. A completely redesigned hull with better ballistics protection, including a significantly sloped front plate, was introduced for the tank. The turret was also heavily armored with a thickness of 152mm on the front face. The engine would be the same Rolls-Royce Meteor power plant as the Cromwell and Comet. Main armament would be the 17-pounder, which had a proven track record and was able to penetrate all German tanks in service at the time, including the Tiger II. Secondary armament was the 20mm Polsting cannon mounted to the left side of the gun. The first prototypes for the Centurion Mk weren't completed before the end of World War II, so the tank never saw service. Even before the introduction of the Mk, the Mk II was already in development with additional hull armor and a cast turret. Serial production of 800 units of the Mk II were ordered in November of 1945. The Centurion continued to be upgraded and modernized over the production history of the tank. The Mk III added the 20-pounder and a Besta tank machine gun, along with fitting a fully stabilized gun control system for firing on the move. The Mk V II introduced the 105mm Royal Ordnance L7 as the main armament. The Mk VII, also known as the FV 4012, which is the featured model in this episode, was an up-armored version of the Mk VII, which was introduced in 1953. The Centurion was produced in the United Kingdom until 1962, with 4,423 units produced in 13 basic marks along with numerous variants. Israel, South Africa, and Sweden had their own variants of the Centurion, which were produced even later. The South African variant named the Oliphant is still in production today. While the Centurion was conceived as a heavy cruiser tank, it would eventually be reclassified as a main battle tank as the term came into vogue in the 1960s. For the British, the Centurion marked the end of the infantry cruiser division in tank design, as the Centurion was considered a universal tank capable of filling both roles. Centurions served in multiple wars including Korea, Vietnam, and multiple conflicts in the Middle East, including the Six-Day War, Yom Kippur War, and the 1991 Gulf War. The tank is mostly retired at this point in time with the exception of the previously mentioned Oliphant version of the tank. In World of Tanks, the Centurion Mk VII builds upon the playstyle of the Centurion Mk I and Carnarvon, which in turn play very similarly to the American medium tank line. Hull-down tactics and terrain abuse are the strengths of the Centurion Mk VII, as the turret is well armored and has 10 degrees of gun depression. The tank's hull, though, isn't particularly well armored, and hull hits tend to damage the ammo rack. The tank's top gun is the 105mm Royal Ordnance L7A1, which gives the tank a significant firepower boost over the 20-pounder on the Centurion Mk I, and is the first gun on a British medium tank with decent alpha. The trade-off is a slow rate of fire. Reload times with 100% crew and a rammer is approximately 10 seconds. This is a big change from previous British guns and puts a damper on brawling. While generally accurate, along with having a high shell velocity, the gun is still a bit spastic at times even after the 8.6 patch, making hitting specific weak spots more difficult than it should be. The 105mm gun should be a priority to unlock and mount as soon as you can afford it, as it gives the tank the punch it needs to compete against tier 9s and 10s. It should also be noted that the 20-pounder B-barrel is also unlockable from the Carnarvon. Standard ammunition for the 105mm gun is APDS. These rounds have 268mm of penetration. Premium rounds are HESH, which stands for High Explosive Squash Head. These munitions are thin metal shells filled with plastic explosives and a delayed action base fuse. They are meant to impact against an armor plate and spread out, then explode, creating a shockwave that spalls the armor, damages internal components, and injures the crew. In-game, HESH has the same mechanics as HE and is generally unreliable other than on the FV215B183. I generally avoided their use with the 105mm gun since the ADPS rounds have adequate penetration. The Centurion Mk VII has good mobility, although the top speed is capped at 40 km per hour just like the Mk I. The top engine is not a priority, although it does help the tank accelerate faster as well as assist in hill climbing. It should be noted that the top engine is also unlockable through the Conqueror. The tank is generally not fast enough to take key map positions, so rushing those spots early in a battle generally isn't advisable. The playstyle for the tank should generally be second line and hull down as often as possible. Brawling is not advisable as the gun's reload rate is too slow and the tank has no hull armor as well as having a vulnerable ammo rack. One thing that should be noted is the size of the tank, which is quite large. As you see here next to the T-57 Heavy, it's quite a bit larger, and the only part of the T-57 that you can see from the side view is the top of the T-57's turret. For equipment on this tank, I recommend a vertical stabilizer to improve aim times on the move, a rammer to improve reload times, and optics to improve view range. While I do recommend optics, I did run primarily a vent on this tank, which was an acceptable option. A wet ammo rack is another potential option to help protect the vulnerable ammo rack. For crew skills, I recommend camo first, as long-range sniping while staying invisible is very useful. Other useful skills are Sixth Sense, Recon, Clutch Braking, Smooth Ride, Snapshot, Safe Stowage, Repair, and Brothers in Arms. Safe Stowage is particularly critical to give the ammo rack additional protection. I rather enjoyed the Centurion Mk, and the Mark 7.1 is basically the same tank with a better gun. The Mark 7.1 is an incredibly effective tank when used properly, which is hull down, and it rivals the American tanks in this regard. Anyone that does well in those tanks will also do well in the Mark 7.1. The first replay that I'll be looking at is a solo battle on Malinovka from September 1st, 2013. Please note that this is an 8.7 patch battle. As just noted, the map for this battle is Malinovka, and my basic strategy for this map is as follows. The key area on this map is the hill on the northeastern flank. The western flank near the spawns is camping territory. The amount of tanks that camp the spawns is inversely proportional to the average tank tier. In low tier battles, at least 75% of each team will camp. By tier 7, that number is reduced to around 25%. While the team that controls the top of the hill doesn't necessarily win this map all the time, having control gives your team a pretty big advantage. Fast mediums can typically rush to the top section of the hill and provide an early spotting advantage. Unless I'm in a very slow tank, I always climb the hill at least part way. Both sides of the map have good cover along the edges of the map, as well as more centrally located areas with good lanes of fire. As noted at the top of the loading screen, this is a standard battle. Reviewing tank composition for this battle reveals the following. This is a tier 9 battle with 7 tier 9s on my team and 6 on the enemy team. My team has 3 tier 8s while the enemy team has 5. My team has 3 tier 7s while the enemy team has 2. Both teams have 2 tier 5 scouts. No arty in this match. I know one player in this match by name from the Wot forums, and that's Tedster59 on my team. The enemy team has a member of Relic Main who I'll need to keep an eye on. As the match loads in, my plan is to go all the way up the hill. While the Centurion Mark 7.1 isn't fast enough to take the hill outright, there are a few spots on the approach to the hill where I'll be able to go hull down. As there's no arty in this match, the enemy will have a hard time dislodging me when hull down. As the match gets underway, I'll immediately start heading north and then east and go up the hill. I'm gonna knock down the equipment rack. It's one of those things that I've gotten in the habit of doing anytime I'm near it. If you leave it there, enemies will be able to hide behind it, and you'll end up wasting shots trying to stop cap. There's also a replay I showed previously where a tank was actually hiding behind the box of ammo and I couldn't spot him. So it's definitely well worth knocking those down. Climbing up the hill. Team's really kind of mulling around cap right now, which isn't a great sign. I was hoping that more tanks would come up the hill. Got a ELC Mk spotted and an MT25 climbing the hill, as well as an AMX 1390. There's an IS-8 at F9. Trying to line up something. I'm blocked by terrain. Briefly line up the ELC AMX, but I miss. I've been spotted. ELC AMX gets knocked down by our E75. Looks like we have a few more tanks heading in our direction. The enemy AMX 1390 is pulling back. Doesn't appear the enemy has any firepower pointed in this direction yet. There's their IS-8. He's in the open. I'm going to line him up. And I get a hit. MT25 rushing down the hill. 59 hits me in the fuel tank. I line up the MT25 and I knock him down. I need to get out of this position as quickly as possible. Begin to head back up the hill. And another enemy shot at me and missed, hit the edge of the hill. As expected, the enemy reached the top of the hill first. I'll continue to move up to the peak of the current rise and go hull down. The only danger from this location are tanks at the tree stand at E8, although that location will likely only be able to see the top of my tank. You'll see that I'm going to bounce back and forth. I'm going to go up, I'm going to shoot, and I'm going to head back to minimize my exposure. I get a hit on the 59. This gun has no issue cutting through the front of a 59. Or 54 for that matter. Lining up the T-54. And I get a hit. Backing back down the hill to minimize my exposure. Waiting for my gun to reload. Bounce off the front of the 59. Likely hit him in the mantlet, that's why it bounced. 59 is a pretty hard turret face. Got a hull shot on the 59. Get a hit. We also have an IS-8 at the back. Trying to line up the other 59. Don't really have a great shot. Take a shot at the IS-8, but I likely hit him in the turret and bounce. Do not have a lot of support at this point, just myself and a Leopard PTA. Hit the 59. He was charging in. The other 59 is using our 59's wreck. Take a couple hits there, but I knocked down the 59. Enemy still has a 59, an IS-8, and a T-54 on the hill. And I noticed their relic player in the stand of trees over there. Bounce a shot. Try to take a blind fire on the relic player and I miss. Our E-75 knocks down the IS-8. And I knocked down the Type 59 that was behind the wreck. It's one of the nice uses of the White Death tank skins. You can actually see where the enemy is when he's behind a wreck, because the wreck will screw with your reticule. Get a critical hit on the T-54. Got a good angle on him here. His hull is fully exposed. Waiting for my gun to reload. And I get a penetrating hit. Enemy Tortoise has joined the party on the hill. And I'm going to try to line up his commander's cupola, which is exposed. And I get a hit. Again, White Death tank skin's coming in handy, so I know exactly what I can see on the Tortoise. Enemy T-54, that's a relic player. Trying to line him up, but looks like he's below a rise there on me. No shot at the Tortoise. Looks like he's waiting for us to make the first move. I bounce a shot from the T-54. I have some decent support on the hill finally. 5120's joined us IS-8. And noticing that I do have help, I'm going to begin to push up. Need to lead the charge and get my team moving. Just see the top of the Tortoise, but I want to take down the 54. I get a penetrating hit, but he hits me back. And I'm down to 28% health. Trying to line up the 54 for the kill shot and knock him down. And he damages my gun, and I will fix that with my repair kit. Tedster charged in down at the bottom of the hill, and he got knocked down by their ISU. Tortoise doesn't really know which way to point. He's trying to face up our E-75, it looks like. And our 5120 knocks him down. With the enemy team defeated on the hill and whittled down to 6 tanks, 5 of which were spotted near base or in the field, I push over and down the hill to keep pressure on the enemy team. I would generally be more cautious in this position if fewer of the enemy tanks had been spotted near their cap. It should be noted that not a single top tier tank on my team is near our cap, while 2 of the enemy's top tiers are near their cap. Their 3002D tried to push in on our AT-15 along the water on the western flank, and he gets knocked down. Everyone's following me. This is one of the situations where my aggressiveness comes in handy. I'm able to lead the charge and get other players to follow me. Sometimes it's my own detriment because I will die in situations that I shouldn't because I'm overly aggressive. Got an IS-8 spotted, T-30, Tiger. With my health low, I hang back at the edge of the woods rather than push forward on the remaining enemies. There's no need to take any risks here with the match in hand. Get a hit. Basically going to take the target of opportunity. ISU knocks down the AT-15. Lining up the Tiger. I accidentally fired HE. And I switch it back. Lost a couple tanks here, but we have a big lead. I miss a shot on the IS-8. We knocked down our Leopard PTA. Still have a 7-tank lead. Trying to line up the ISU and I get a hit. He's likely faced at our guys that are farther up. It's quite likely that I'm not spotted right now. Can't line up the ISU. No shots. IS-8's hidden, T-30's hidden. T-30 exposes himself, but I miss. Definitely not going to be aggressive here. I'm going to let our guys take the front line. With no shots, I am going to begin to move up a little bit. Enemy is hiding behind the buildings, behind their cap. Not really in any danger moving up. ISU lights back up, but he's behind the hill, so I can't shoot him. Our Tiger takes down the IS-8. E-75 takes down the ISU-152. And our T-54 takes down the T-30 for the win. Looking at the after action screens, I destroyed 4 tanks, damaged 5 more, hit 18 of 23 shots for 5,273 points of damage, and earned 1,852 experience before the double. I also earned a steel wall medal. Overall, I started off this match heading up the hill to a key position on the map. While the Centurion Mk 7-1 isn't fast enough to contest the hill, it allowed me to take up a hull-down position on the slope near the top, utilizing a key strength of my tank. Once the enemy's tanks on the hill were whittled down, I pushed on them, leading my team to take the hill. I quickly knew based on last known positions that 5 out of the 6 remaining enemy tanks were camped at their base. I immediately pushed over and down the hill to keep my team moving. As I noted in match, all our top tier tanks were on the hill while 2 of the enemy's top tiers camped. 6 tanks camping base in this map is generally a poor strategy, and more so for top tiers. With the enemy team penned in at their base, I held back at the edge of the woods due to my somewhat low health. There's not much point to taking big risks when the match is essentially in hand. The second replay that I'll be looking at is a solo battle on Lakeville from July 24th, 2013. Please note that this is an 8.6 patch battle. As just noted, the map for this battle is Lakeville, and my basic strategy for this map is as follows. The key area on this map is the town on the eastern flank. The team that wins in town typically wins the match. The middle road, while less critical, is good for spotting enemies headed into town as well as supporting town. The last time this map was reworked, the lanes of fire from the middle into town were reworked and allow for supporting fire on the backside of the church. No matter what anyone tells you, the valley on the eastern side of this map is the least important area. Coverage is required to keep the enemy team honest, but personally I don't go to this flank unless I have no other option. Valley pushes can work, but the bad terrain makes this difficult at best, and any team paying attention will have no issue either stuffing the push or coming back to defend cap. The middle road also requires coverage for the same reason. Where I go in this map is dependent on what kind of tank I'm driving. Heavies and mediums typically go to town. Sometimes TDs, although non-turreted tanks are at a disadvantage in town. Mediums can also be successful on the middle road. As noted at the top of the loading screen, this is a standard battle. Reviewing tank composition for this battle reveals the following. This is a tier 10 battle with 5 tier 10s on my team and 7 on the enemy team. My team has 3 tier 9s while the enemy team has 2. My team has 6 tier 8s while the enemy team has 4. My team has a single tier 7 while the enemy team has 2. Each team has a single tier 10 arty piece. The enemy team has a bit of an advantage with 2 extra tier 10s. This is partially mitigated by both teams having 3 tier 10 tank destroyers, although the enemy's TDs are harder hitting. I don't recognize anyone in this match. As the match loads in, my initial plan is to head over to town and take up a position somewhere in the C row. I won't play overly aggressive here as the enemy has quite a bit of heavy firepower. I'll be looking for targets of opportunity rather than committing to a specific position. As the battle gets underway, I immediately start heading east. I'll take the A row and follow the road into the backside of town. The team has failed to cover the middle road, and with a few too many tanks in the valley, I'm better served hanging back and sniping into town from C4. I'm not too far away, so I should be able to get into position before any fighting starts in town. Not a lot of hull down positions per se, but that's not super critical as long as the enemy is kept at range. Maneuvering over to C4, I've got an AMX 1375 spotted. Awful Panther in town, lining up 1375. He takes a big hit from something, and I knock him down. I got spotted, likely by the 1375, so I'm going to back out of that position, get into cover just in case the enemy has other tanks that can spot me. although they would have to be on the edge of town to have any chance of being able to shoot me. You can see on the mini-map that the spotting circle is way out on the edge of it. Tried to line up the M48 Patton and I miss. Hit the top of the hill. Have a T28 prototype coming up with me. Still not particularly thrilled with the team distribution. Way too many tanks in the valley. And they're engaged with an E100. I don't have any shots right now. I'm using this little knob of a rise here to go partially hull down. Should provide me some protection if the enemy is able to spot me and put fire on me. Don't have any shots right now though. I'm using this alley here so I can get spots on the backside of the church, which is a position that tanks tend to move up to. Keeping a very close eye on that 110. He pops out and I hit him in the side. Our IS-3 knocks down the M48 Patton. One less threat to deal with. Just biding my time here, waiting for enemies. Leo PTA comes out in the open. I get a hit. Our prototype hits him as well. I get spotted. I'm going to hold position here because I am hull down. Leo PTA misses me. I get another hit, so does the prototype. I'm going to back out of this position now, as I do get spotted again. Waiting for the Leopard to pop out in the open. Pops out in the open, but I miss. And our T28 prototype knocks him down. We've got a JP100 spotted at G4. That pretty much seals up the center road. I'm not going to push any further down that direction. I am just biding my time again here, waiting to see if any of the enemies are going to try to come over to this side of the church. I'm going to move up, peek again. Nothing right now. Our Valley team is stalled at E2, not unexpectedly. Keeping an eye on that E50M, see if he pops out of cover so I can shoot him. I'm also maneuvering to try to get a slightly different angle on Valley to see if I can get some shots on him. I do have to be careful though with that JP down at H4. I'm lining up the 110 and I get a hit in the flank. Trying to line him up again. He's pretty exposed right now. And I get another hit. He's down to 142 hit points. He disappears. I had a brief spot at the E50M, but he pushed out of the way. There's the E50M again, and I get a hit. And he's maneuvering out of his position. I got flank shots on the Foch 155, and I get a critical hit, likely knocked his track off. And our team has lost the spot on him. E50M is in the open. Trying to line him up. Get a hit. He's still in the open. I'm going to stay focused on him, just waiting for my reload to complete. He's likely behind the building. I'm going to move up just a tad. Try to see if I can get an angle on him. Unfortunately, he's not popping back up. He is at the edge of my view range. Keeping an eye on the alley behind the church. Hoping that OSB will back up. And I got a flank hit on him as he backs into my line of fire. Keeping a close eye on that Foch. I'm going to have a tough time penning him like this. And I bounce off his front armor. I'm going to stay focused on him. If I can hit the top of the radar dish, I can do damage. We lose our E3 in front of him, which is kind of limiting my angles here. The OSB slides in front of him, still trying to line him up. Just have a sliver of him, switch to the OSB. I get a flank hit, leaving him at 24 hit points. Our T69 knocks down the Foch 155. Valley is now down to just a T30. We lost all our other tanks in the valley. Still being cautious. I can't push up too much because the JP 100. Hoping that the OSB will back out. Our Tiger 2 knocks him down. With the enemy's town team whittled down along with a Jagdpanther E100 holding the middle road, it's time for me to move out. I plan to head through town and try to get fire on the JP E100's flank. While my team currently has a 2-tank advantage, the enemy team still has 3 tier 10 tanks to our 1, including 2 of their top tier TDs. Both teams still have their arty though. I'm out of range of the JP 100 for sure, and nothing else to spot me. Gonna go and maneuver through town here. Friendly already knocked down the AC Mil 48. So I'm going to move up to the other side of town. I'm going to stay along the 0 row. And should provide me shot opportunities on the enemies that are around their cap. Based on last known positions, it appears that all of the enemies are pretty close to their cap. Based on the tanks we have over on this flank, I'm going to be hard-pressed to push on the enemy near their cap. So I'm going to have to just hold this position, keep the enemy busy as long as I can, while my team is setting up for a valley push with our T-30 and T-110E4. This should be a successful maneuver at this point in the match because the remaining enemies are distracted trying to protect the eastern flank. Our T-28 prototypes pushing in on the JP-100. I didn't really have any good opportunities from the locations in town. I'm trying to line up the JP-100 now. And I get a hit. I get spotted. And I get hit by the 215B 183. Knocked off my track too. He likely could have one-shot me if he hit me in the hull. Looks like my track deflected a lot of his damage. After taking that hard hit, I've backed into cover. Moving up again, going to try to get a flank shot on the JP 100. And I bounce. Keeping him lined up since he's lit. Got a flank shot on him, but he disappears before I can fire. Fire a blind shot, likely a miss. Valley push is underway. E4 has knocked down the Awful Panther. Enemies down to 3 tanks now. We have a 3-tank lead. All the remaining tanks are tier 10s though. Using this rock for cover while I try to relight the JP 100. Our team is continuing to push the valley. They'll be up out of the valley very shortly, providing flank support. There's the 215B 183. He gets knocked down by the E4. Enemy E50M is lit near the backside of their cap. I bounce a shot, likely from the JP 100. With our team getting whittled down on my flank, I've taken it upon myself to distract the enemy while our T-30 and T-110E4 come out of the valley. While this will keep the enemy's attention firmly on my flank, I've put myself in a very bad position by rushing out into the open. This is far too aggressive a maneuver considering that a JP-100 is directly in front of me. With the match basically in hand at this point, waiting 30 or so seconds longer would have allowed the valley team time to put fire on the remaining enemies without putting my tank at so much risk. While survival at this point in the match isn't critical, it's just not a smart move on my part. And just about one-shottable to the JP-100. Our E4 knocks down the E50M. Lost our Tiger II to the E50M right before he got knocked down. I hit the cupola of the JP-100, but I take a return shot and I'm now down to 3% health. I'm trying to get around on the JP-100 since I know he has a long reload, but our E4 is able to knock him down for the win. Based on information from the Wot Replay Analyzer, I destroyed 1 tank, damaged 6 more, hit 19 of 22 shots for 4,448 points of damage, and earned 1,438 experience before the double. Please note that XP and credit values in the screenshots are non-premium values. Overall, while my initial plan was to head over to town, I quickly had to switch gears as my team failed to cover the center road. I provided supporting fire for our town team until the enemies in town were whittled down. With the center road blocked by an enemy JPE-100, I made the call to circle around through town. While I was maneuvering over to the far eastern flank, our T-30 and T-110E4 were preparing a valley push. At this point in the match, this maneuver was successful as the enemy team was concentrating on fighting off my group in the east. As the team on my flank got whittled down, I became overly aggressive in an attempt to maintain the enemy's attention from our valley team by rushing out into the open adjacent to the enemy's cap. While I did survive the ensuing encounter with the enemy JP-100, this doesn't excuse my mistake. I was too aggressive in a situation where I would have been better off sitting back and sniping while waiting for the valley team to arrive. As the match was basically in hand at this point, there was little to gain by throwing my tank away. Thank you for watching this episode of What I'm Thinking. Stay tuned for another episode soon.
Ha ha ha.